To ensure you don't miss a single hardware unbox video, hit subscribe, then tap the bell. Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. So a couple of months ago, ViewSonic reached out and said they had a brand new ultrawide monitor that I might be interested in checking out. As a big fan of the 21:9 format for gaming, I jumped on board with this opportunity because this monitor in question isn't a standard ultrawide. Rather than using a 2560 by 1080 or 3440 by 1440 resolution, the VP3881 packs a higher 3840 by 1600 resolution, which is something I haven't used before. Now the 38-inch VP3881 isn't really designed for gaming. It's a professional monitor with features like X-Rite calibration, yes, calibration, for accurate sRGB reproduction. But I was interested to see whether the larger size and higher resolution would have a notable impact on gaming, especially coming from the Acer Predator X34 that I use personally. Is this the next step for gaming ultrawides, or is there not much point when we already have 3440 by 1440? There's actually a surprising number of advantages to the 38-inch 3840 by 1600 panel compared to the slightly smaller, lower resolution ultrawides that are commonly used today. While we are only talking about a few extra inches added to the diagonal dimension relative to more common 34 and 35-inch ultrawides, the overall display area is a significant 21% larger thanks to an additional 8 centimeters of width and a bit over 3 centimeters of height. When viewed from the same distance as a 34-inch monitor, it's more immersive and has quite a noticeable impact, even if some of those dimension changes don't sound that large. The great thing about this particular 38-inch panel is the radius of the curve. Modern ultrawides typically use an 1800R or 1900R curve, which in my opinion is a bit too aggressive, while the original Acer X34 used a rather flat 3800R curve. The VP3881 sits in between at 2300R, which is that little bit flatter than most modern gaming ultrawides, and I think it works really well. It's not as obviously curved, and that makes it better to use for productivity apps when you're not gaming. While the panel is larger and slightly less curved, it does maintain the same pixel density as 34-inch 3440 by 1440 panels. The higher 3840 by 1600 resolution basically matches the increase in display size, now posting 110.9 ppi versus 109.6 on the other older ultrawide panel types. You actually get nearly 1.2 million more pixels here for a 24% increase, and of course there is going to be a performance hit associated with that. In fact, let's take a look at how the higher resolution impacts performance. This is going to be a fairly basic comparison between 3440 by 1440 and 3840 by 1600 resolutions on my personal rig, which is currently equipped with a Ryzen 7 1700X at 3.9 GHz, 16 gig of DDR4 3000 and an Nvidia Titan X Pascal. However, it should give you a good idea of how this higher resolution compares to the current high-end ultrawide standard in 8 games. All the games I tested here were set to their maximum quality presets or ultra presets using DirectX 11. Playing games at 3440 by 1440 with ultra details is already a bit of a challenge with a Titan X or GTX 1080 Ti class graphics card, especially if you're targeting above 60 FPS. In GTA 5, we're seeing 1% lows around the 50 FPS mark at 3440 wide, and that drops closer to 40 FPS at 3840 wide, so a 17% reduction. In Rise of the Tomb Raider, the performance drop is a bit higher at 21%, though as we aren't achieving 30 FPS 1% lows, you'd probably turn down the quality settings anyway. Then in Watch Dogs 2, we're looking at a modest 14% drop in 1% lows, which keeps the game pretty playable, while in Prey, it's a significant drop from around 70 FPS to just 59 FPS in 1% lows. You'll get a similar performance drop of around 16 to 17% in both Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Battlefield 1, though both games still run above 60 FPS and are quite easy to play on such a high resolution provided you have a decent graphics card. In Dirt 4, we're seeing around a 21% drop in performance looking at the 1% low results, while in Far Cry 5, the drop is a more manageable 12%. Overall, when looking at average frame rates, the move from 3440 by 1440 to 3840 by 1600 sees a performance drop of around 18% on average, which is in line with the resolution change. Similarly, when looking at 1% lows, the shift to a higher resolution brings about a 17% performance drop. So this new 3840 by 1600 panel is larger and more immersive, which is great for gaming, though it does come at a performance hit. I do like the extra size, but Is it really worth the minor upgrades over 3440 by 1440 at 34 inches when you get that performance hit as well? For some people, the extra size will make no difference and all you're left with is reduced performance. For others, the extra size might be great and then you might be fine with the performance hit. Bit of a personal preference thing here, and I think it does come down to your system as well. My personal rig has a Titan X in it, so I'm somewhat okay with the performance hit and I like the extra size. Others gaming on more like a GTX 1070 on high-res ultrawides probably won't want fewer frames. The other issue with these panels at the moment is refresh rate. The VP3881 is capped at 60Hz, which makes sense as it is a professional monitor where, additional frame rate isn't as important as with gaming monitors. Currently though, we have 3440 by 1440 panels that go as high as 120Hz, and there are similar monitors scheduled for release later this year that push that up to 200Hz. If we start to see 3840 by 1600 push into the gaming market, 60Hz really isn't going to cut it, so we need at least 100Hz here for these sorts of panels to be attractive to gamers. Luckily, there are some big benefits to using a 3840 by 1600 monitor outside of gaming. As the pixel density remains around that 110 ppi mark, you can still use these sorts of panels in desktop apps at the native resolution without needing to mess around with display scaling. It maintains a 1440p class density, it just gives you more screen real estate to work with. And the extra screen real estate is genuinely useful. One of the big improvements is snapping apps in a side-by-side view. On a 3440 by 1440 monitor, this side-by-side view gives you two 1720 by 1440 windows, which I have felt isn't quite enough horizontal distance, as a lot of interfaces are designed with 1920 wide in mind. Well, the 3840 by 1600 VP3881 gives you two 1920 by 1600 windows, which achieves that nice compatible 1920 wide resolution while still providing a ton of vertical space to work with. Again, it may seem like a minor change, but in some apps it does make a big difference to usability. Just as an aside too, if you're interested in the ViewSonic VP3881 as a professional grade monitor, it really is excellent. Fantastic color reproduction with certified average Delta E values below 2.0 for industry standards like sRGB and Rec 709, and it's one of the most uniform curved displays I've looked at. Plus it supports USB-C connectivity that can charge a connected device and provide display output over a single cable. Anyway, at the start of this video, I wondered whether 3840 by 1600 ultrawides would be the next step for gaming monitors. Having now used one, I think there's a lot of great qualities to this type of panel that makes it a decent all-rounder for gaming and desktop apps. It doesn't provide anything significantly better than more commonly found 3440 by 1440 displays, but it is a bit better in some key areas, and that's the real selling point here. However, I do think that to make these sorts of panels work well for gaming, they will need to push up to higher refresh rates, as 60Hz is a bit last gen these days. Whether or not it's possible, or whether companies are even working on higher refresh panels at this resolution remains to be seen. And of course, you'll have to put up with around a 17% performance here to enjoy the extra size and pixel count. Anyway, that's it for this brief look at 3840 by 1600 gaming. Thanks to ViewSonic for sending out a VP3881 for some testing. It's always appreciated. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and support us on Patreon if you feel like it. There's some cool stuff over there. And as always, I'll catch you next time.